I want to welcome everybody, especially Mr. Zelnick, here for what is a long-delayed ceremony acknowledging a tremendously generous gift to City College, the Psychology Department, and to the Colin Powell School. And I thought it would be interesting to tell you just a little bit, a couple of things. First of all, the institution you've contributed to has changed even in the 5 years since you made your donation. I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. And I'd also like to make sure that you know how deeply we understand and appreciate the value of the alumnus base to the work that we do at City College and at the Colin Powell School. 2 years ago, we took the various departments of the social sciences and with a lot of support from donors like yourself, we founded the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership. And so many of the things that we were just talking about, how you take academic education and connect it with practical skills, how you take students who come to school with a sense of what they want to be in the world and equip them for that kind of a career. We're moved into the heart of the Colin Powell School program. We founded an Office of Student Success with 14 people dedicated to making sure that students don't just pass their classes and get the right classes, but really prosper and develop professional skills. We are in the process, as we talked about, of putting together an internship program where across the school, students who want to go out and work in a community setting have someone that's managing community relationships, someone that's doing professional skills development. What we're finding is students that do those kinds of internships develop skills, workplace skills that they don't get anyplace else in the school. But the main thing that we're trying to do in the Colin Powell School is to take the historic mission of City College, and you describe it, or it is described about you in some of the documents that I read from 10 years ago. People who come to City College really with, in a position of education absolutely making the difference between whether they're going to be successful or not successful. There are a lot of institutions around the country where education essentially certifies somebody. You come knowing a lot of things, you come with a lot of networks, you come with a lot of social capital, you spend 4 years at a college to get a degree, and then you go out and you get a job. At City College, people find themselves. They discover psychology, they discover research, they discover that they might have an aptitude in an industry, computer science, that was only emerging as they're studying. One of our supporters told us a couple years ago that if you're a freshman coming into City College right now, 45% of the jobs that will be available when you graduate don't currently exist. That's how fast our industry is working. That's how fast technology is moving. And so figuring out how we go from the classroom to the workplace, how we build relationships with people in industry, how we build relationships with our alumni is absolutely essential to the success of our students. I've spent a lot of the last year talking to alumni such as yourself, and one of the things I say to them is this, is that if you graduate from Princeton or Yale or Harvard or Stanford or Michigan or any of those places, the reality today is that you graduate into a network of people that are so connected. This is where they get jobs, this is where they share information, these are the people that they become entrepreneurs with. And I believe that in 1954 you had something of that network. I think New York City was peopled by alumni of City College who were on the lookout for each other, kind of knew that they came from the same experience, worked together, and together really built New York City. And somewhere along the line, we stopped doing that with our alumni groups. We keep track of some of them, but if you were a City College student 10 years ago graduating, there wasn't a group of City College alums out there saying, come join us, come work with us to build these things. So we as a college, and as at the Colin Powell School, have gotten very, very serious about contacting our alums and saying the following things. We know that in the years after you graduate, you may need some help from us, and we're collecting sort of postgraduate programs that will help you out. We think that 5 years after you graduate, you'll be able to help our students with practice interviews, give them advice on how they make a transition. 10 years down the line, you're going to be hiring people. We want you to hire our people. 15 or 20 years down the line or further along, we hope that they'll follow your example and look at the work that we're doing here and find it in their hearts to contribute and support this work. Your example, not just that you've done this tremendously generous thing, but that the way you distributed your gift, you're given a scholarship, there's a bequest gift, you really kind of figured out how to look at at what's mattered to you in your life and what the work that we're doing here at the college, and really contributed to the work we do. And with your permission, maybe even without your permission, we will hold you up as an example to some of the people that we're talking about, because really, in this day and age, a public institution like City College, we survive. We survive on the resources of the state, though those are dwindling. We survive on the resources we get from student tuition, but we want that to be as low as possible. We also survive because people for whom public education has mattered turn around and help out. And so every year when students graduate and we talk about what we want them to be when they move out in the world, one of the things we're careful to say is you didn't get here by yourself, and as soon as you're able, we'd like you to turn around and help out. And so this room, this scholarship program, the named professorship that we've talked about, all of these things are testimony not just to what you've decided to do for your alma mater, but also an example for generations and generations of students to follow going forward. And so we're deeply grateful for what you've done for this department, for this school. We promise that the resources you've given to us will be well used and cherished. We look forward to talking to you about it and making sure you know how we do this work. But we also want to consider you one of the kind of founding fathers of this way of supporting education at City College. We've been doing this for a while, but we are still, in a really important sense, a startup when it comes to leveraging the resources and enthusiasm and engagement of people like yourself. So on behalf of the Colin Powell School, I want to just tell you how deeply grateful we are, and how much we're looking forward to keeping in touch with you and telling you about this work. It is now my proud responsibility to introduce the chair of the psychology department. It is, he will tell you in the first or second sentence, the biggest department at City College. They are very big. This is Bob Miller, and you know him already. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Zelnick, welcome, and echoing what Dean Boudreau said, thank you for your generous gift to the department. I thought it would be good just to say a few things about the difference between 1954 and 2015, both of which I think are quite auspicious years. In 1954, I understand that Harry Truman actually came to this campus to meet with alum. He was the president. And Eleanor Roosevelt came several times in 1954. I don't know if you ever visited with her while she was here, but she met with students on several occasions here. In the graduating class of 1954 was Arno Penzias, who ended up winning a Nobel Prize in physics. I don't know if you had any contact with Arno Penzias, but in '78 he won the Nobel Prize. And a couple of years later, John O'Keefe came to the psychology department, and he won the Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine just last year. He was a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, the way you were a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. It also was a landmark year in the Supreme Court because 1954 was the Brown versus Kansas City Board of Education ruling on separate but unequal separating whites and blacks. So that decision was informed in large measure by one of the faculty at City College, Kenneth Clark, who did landmark work in something called the Dahl preference test, showing that children, African American children, would often identify with a white doll over, they would identify with a black doll but prefer a white doll. So the Supreme Court really found that quite influential in making a decision, and City College was a big part of that. And of course you graduated in 1954, and as we were talking about, soon after you graduated, you went to the Army Research Medical Lab, I guess.
Army Medical Research Lab.
Yeah, and it seems to me from what you were saying that your work in human factors was in large measure informed by the kind of research training you got here with Plotkin and other people. So you used the kind of training that you got here to become the kind of practical person that it seems that you have been your whole life, that you tried to solve practical problems and you use the skill sets that you got here. I was looking at these life lessons here, and many of them are, think outside the box, be adaptable, overcome adversity, solve problems, don't create problems. It's this kind of thing, like, we need to tackle things that are practical. And it seems like your whole life has been that kind of thing. You went to University of Illinois, got a master's in something like industrial relations.
Industrial labor relations.
Yeah, and then it seems you did the practical thing. You said, let me get a decent middle class job, retrained in systems analysis, got this job at IBM, which is a really cushy job to get, right? IBM was a great company, really stable position. And then I guess you had various other jobs with American Airlines, consulting, other things. But you were always thinking about, what do I need to do with this education that I got to parlay it into something that's going to give me a good middle class living, and you were able to do that. And that's what I want to do with our students here in 2015. It's also, I think, an auspicious year. It is the biggest department. We have 1,400 majors. Mr. Zelnick gave me this photo before. This is the psych, on the bottom is the psych department in 1954.
Oh my goodness.
There are 6 people, 6 faculty members. We have 40 now.
There's 7.
7? 2, 4, 6, 7. 7 people here. One. We have 40 faculty members now.
Wow.
1 in 6 graduates of City College is a psychology major. 1 in 6.
Wow.
So it's the department that puts out the largest number of graduates. But I think one of the obligations we have to our students is making sure that after they leave this place, they can get a decent living. They can have a decent middle class job. And so what we're doing now, I mentioned this to you, is trying to think about the kind of route that you took, the kind of career trajectory that you took, in which we're lining up, what can you do with psychology and the business world? What kind of internships can we help our students get, and what kinds of jobs can we help them succeed in? We would love to work with you in that. You've given us, this lovely room, which is extremely well used. It's one of the most common and popular rooms here in the psych department. You've given us this scholarship for students with disabilities, so helping those students who've had difficulty. I guess that comes from your creative and practical side also, because I understand that your beloved wife had difficulty walking, and you used your skills in human factors to try to help her to walk.
That's right.
And so I think that is something that's extremely endearing to me. It's something that I enjoy hearing a story like that, because it's something that in helping our students who have difficulties, we feel heartfelt. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And then the professorship. Because we have now this business track, and because you have this history of interacting psychology and business, I would love to think about what a professorship might look like that follows in the kind of lead that you've given us already. And maybe you and I can sit and talk about what that might be. Yeah. So I think 1954 was auspicious, 2015 was auspicious, and I hope we can bring those two together.
Fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And now it's my turn to introduce you. Would you give some remarks to us?
In the scholarships, is they had some of the students write me letters. And rather than talk about myself, which is very boring, I thought that I would read a couple of excerpts from some of the students who received some scholarships from me and my wife. This is from a gal called Wendy Sanchez Valachian. I probably did terrible pronunciation of her last name. But it says, as anyone attending college knows, the cost of fees, books, and materials and living expenses over the years have been daunting. My husband and I are graduating with $20,000 in school debt. Your contribution is greatly appreciated. I'd like to thank you for your consideration, dedication to such philanthropic actions to City College, and realizing there are groups in our population that need this extra help to make their dreams come true. Now, this is from Melissa Jackson, who is who I now have followed her career, graduated from the Sophie Davis School, and she's also graduated, I think, from Dartmouth. And I think she also is now working in the emergency room in Dartmouth, because I've been following her, and I like to see. I like to see if I can do what some of these have done. And she was also had sickle cell anemia, so she was disabled. All these students are disabled. I am currently preparing for graduation and taking the first series of licensing exams for my medical degree. It requires a great deal of time and financial commitment, and your generous scholarship really made things much easier as I prepare. I'd like to thank you and your family for it. Now, here's another one from Nicole Feebles. There are many, but I just took 3 or 4 just to give you a flavor of what's going on. By awarding me the scholarship, you have lightened my financial burden, which will allow me to focus more on the 2 most important aspects of my master's studies, learning and my thesis research. Your generosity has inspired me to continue my education in biomedical engineering, which will enable me to further develop technologies that will have a significant impact on clinical medicine. I hope one day I'll be able to help students achieve their goals just as you have helped me. And here's the last one. This is from Joseph Cunningham. And I'll just read the last sentence. It says here, "Thank you again for considering me worthy of your scholarship. I will not disappoint you and your faith in my abilities as I complete my degree." Now, I was fortunate enough to get a college degree from City College for a little bit less money than the people are spending now, which was 0. And I felt that if I made a success, and I just want to correct you, I don't want to be middle class, I want to be upper class. And you have to help people just like the people were helped that came back from World War II, who got the GI Bill of Rights. And also, I came back from the Korean War, and I got a GI Bill of Rights. We were most productive as we educated more of the population, even though they couldn't afford it. It's the best investment you make in this world is by enabling people to finish their degree program and to give them hope. And the way I did it was I spread my meager sum among several people. Because I also know is the fact that there are people that know how to figure out this game of getting money from various sources and not to make it too comfortable. So consequently, I only give 20% of their tuition as a scholarship. And it's there to build on it. You can't make life too easy for people. You gotta make them work for it, and just to give them a start is the most important thing. And there's just one message, interestingly enough, that I'd like to, a couple of messages, but one major message. Interestingly enough, at 55, I was in the consulting business, and the business dried up, and I was put into early retirement. I had no pension, and I had a certain amount of money, fortunately, because I was brought up in the Depression, and bringing up in the Depression, you know how I live on practically nothing. Also, the Army paid me such a meager sum of $100 a month, I had to learn how to live on nothing. But, so therefore, in reality, most of the money I've accumulated have been accumulated in retirement. In other words, after I was finished with the middle class jobs, sorry. No, it just goes to show. You have to understand that something that looks like a tragedy, and I was only 55 at the time, really wasn't a tragedy. It opened the door and it forced me to look at alternatives. And we have a strange country. The Internal Revenue Service says if you make money in playing bonds and stocks and things of that nature, you're really not earning it. You have unearned income. I have more unearned income than I had income. And actually, the results have been the ability to give. Because if I was fortunate enough to make some extra money, I decided a long time ago, and I'll quote somebody, Steve Jobs, who you're all familiar, had a a partner called Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was a partner and owned 10% of Apple. But he sold it when it was a failure. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but Apple was a failure, etc. And someone asks you, are you sorry you're not a billionaire now? Because you own 10% of Apple. He said, no. Why not? I don't want to be the richest man in the cemetery. Steve Jobs is in the cemetery. He's still living. So you have to understand it's the fact that possessions have a tendency to possess you. And then you have to spend your whole life paying for your possessions. And if you learn this lesson, you have to budget and allocate your funds in a certain way and then say, okay, here's a percentage, as in the old days in certain religions called a tithe. We give a certain percentage of your income because you were lucky. And I consider myself lucky because I would never predict that there was a door with that name on it. And you really can't predict anything in life. And if I feel fortunate and I was given a step up, I should give a step up to others. And too often, people just use the extra money to buy another home. If I told you what a price of, I'll give you an example. Nowadays, New Yorkers have a great tendency to want to go to the Hamptons. Everybody wants to live in the Hamptons. I don't know why. It's in the middle of nowhere, and there's a single road that goes there that you have to travel 60 miles to get to, and all the beaches are nothing. And when I looked at a house there in 1975, I could have bought a house there for $35,000, and I decided on 3/4 of an acre, right on the water. And I said, and my wife said to me, "Are you crazy to make that trip every weekend along that single-lane highway?" So consequently, I don't understand. You see, sometimes we do things for the wrong reasons. And we have to understand all the time why we do things. And I learned this lesson when I was teaching upstate New York. Because we were doing a co-op program with General Electric. I instigated, you talk about internship, we had a co-op program with General Electric where my students interface with their engineers, because I thought that was very important, to have the interface and to have the practical knowledge. And there was a concept there called value engineering. What you do is you take everything down to its basic parts, and then you decide what you really need. Not what you want, but you really need. And if people looked at life that way, they realize that they're spending a lot of money on things they really don't need. And this was a lesson and through the years from practical experience, you get different lessons. And you learn these lessons from interacting with people who have been there, by listening to people, understanding their needs, and that's what psychology taught me here. The other thing that psychology taught me here, to get back to psychology, is we have a lot of people that were mavericks here. They did not believe in the behaviorist school of psychology. So we had to, as anybody knows, upon my back, I can't go around in a circle like an entertainer. And they were from the Gestalt school.
In the department?
Yeah. And the Gestalt school said the sum of the parts don't equal the whole. Don't listen to what Skinner says up at Harvard. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You gotta look at the total picture and analyze the total picture. And I carried this through life, is to look at it, the total picture, and realize that the sum of the parts do not necessarily equal the whole. There's another thing which we were forced to do, and I don't know if they do it now. We had 6-hour experimental labs.
Yeah, they have no experimental. I don't know if they're 6 hours.
We had 6 hours, from 2 to 8.
How long are they? Are they 6 hours? Yeah.
How much?
6 or 7.
Yeah, it's the same.
But we were forced to replicate an experiment. And the experiment that Stan Yormak, his picture's there, he's dead now, but we did Sharif's experiment. If anybody's familiar with Sharif's experiment, is the fact that you take everybody, put them in a dark room, you have 4 or 5 stooges, and they will discuss what's going on, and they will say, well, how far are we from the door? And then the other student, who was the subject, was brought in, and he would hear this discussion, and we'd ask him, how far are you away from the door? And surprisingly enough, each and every time, everything he said, to 10 feet. So I also learned not to listen to the herd. They can lead you in different directions, and you must start to think for yourself, which I think is a very valuable lesson. And the 4th lesson which I learned is when I was working at the steel mill. I think I'm up to 4, maybe I miscounted. Is the fact that to learn to listen to others, to put yourself in someone else's shoes each and every time when you're talking to them. And this always stood me in great stead being a consultant, because you're always put in a situation where people want to see you fail immediately. And what you have to do is learn from them, and you have to become a fast learner. So you have to always put yourself in someone else's situation. So I think I bored you long enough, etc. And I'm sorry my wife couldn't hear, and I got other stories about that, but I'll just sum it up in one way. I never listened to the doctors. In 7.5 minutes, they can't tell you how to solve a problem. So consequently, I was able, and you alluded to this, to get her walking.
What's the story?
Huh?
What's the story about this? I don't know the story. I know that she...
Well, I won't bore anybody.
No,
No, we'd love to hear.
My wife took a medicine called Fosamax, I don't know what to strengthen bones. They have since discovered that after 20 years it breaks bones rather than support them. So one day she was walking in the bedroom and her leg just broke. And we took her to the hospital. They operated on her leg. And the doctor said the operation was a success. So I said, how come she can't walk? He says it's psychological. And I said to him, did you look at her Achilles heels? Her Achilles were like this. They stood up in the air. In addition to that, she couldn't eat any food and a number of other neurological problems. So and he said he'd never walk again. But basically, what I did, some research, and I was able to, since I did human factors research, we helped with a technician design prosthetics for her. So I helped design the prosthetics that enabled her to stand, which is the first step in walking is standing. Then the second thing I did was she didn't even have enough strength to push a walker. So I redesigned a cerebral palsy walker where I inverse the wheels to because it's very strong, etc., but it's not the average walker. So based upon that design, she was able to stand in a position. Now, once you can get someone to stand, then you can increase their mobility a little bit at a time. So I increased her mobility to the extent to which she was able to walk an hour a day. And I was able to find a doctor who was able to release her Achilles, which made her feet straight with the ground. And this was done over the course of, I kept her alive, because the first place that they threw her was in a nursing home. So I took her out of a nursing home and made a room in my house, because I have a large house. And I told the doctor, just give me a hospital bed, and don't give me a home health aide, because they don't know anything. And with the hospital bed and with some assistance, she survived for 9 more years. Well, you know the average length in the nursing home is, what, 1.5 years, 2 years? Huh? So consequently, you shouldn't give up, and you shouldn't listen, and you should keep moving, because nobody has your motivation to solve a problem. And motivation is the most important thing in solving problems. Today's doctors, pardon the expression, because I've been through 9 years of doctors, and to the best ones, University of Pennsylvania Medical School, which is the one here on 70th Street, what is it called? Hospital for Special Surgery. She was there. So the doctors do not have any time to solve your problem. You're essentially on an assembly line. You go from acute medical environment, because my wife was sick, and they said, we don't treat sick people in the hospital. You go to the next one. Go to the next one. Go to the next one along the line. So basically, fortunately, I could help her, and I did. I also prepared all her meals, because they also left her in a position where she couldn't drink any liquids. She couldn't eat solid food, so she ate puree food. But what else did I have to do? I wasn't working. I already had traveled all around the world. I already suffered through Europe and everything else that people want to do. And also I've been all over the United States as a consultant. So I knew where not to live, etc. And since I had nothing else to do, so I concentrated on making a little bit more money and taking care of my wife. And I think that these are better things to do than to sit around in an old man's home and playing cards and waiting to die. So that's my philosophy of life, is the fact that no matter what your age is, you just gotta keep moving, keep studying, keep learning, and it's all up there, etc. And fortunately, I was trained to learn, and I learned something every day, something new. I also contribute, there's another plaque like that in another place. So the Midwest is getting the benefit. There's one at the University of Illinois. And also, I also wanted to memorialize, there's another conference room at the College of New Jersey. So the question comes up is, if you have the excess money, how many suits can you wear at one time? How many cars can you drive? I give money to charity and I drive a 19-year-old car. Because as long as I can go from point A to point B, what difference does it make? Huh? Yeah. And I get a kick out of the kids today. All wanting cell phones, social media. Who wants to know who's going to the bathroom at what time? Who wants to know all this? We live in a generation, I don't want to go on, but we live in a generation where silence was golden. And it's good to have quiet and peace. So I'm finished. I think I've said enough and for too long.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you, Joe Zelnick, for helping students with disabilities complete their education. I had gone to Cooper Union from 94 to 98 and suffered from depression and anxiety, and I overcame that to come back to school back in 2009 to finish my degree in computer engineering here at CCNY. And after that, I'm now working at HedgeServe as a senior front-end engineer. I love computer programming. I'm so happy to be in that field, and just wanted to thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I'm glad I was of assistance.